Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hot Mess Podcast. I'm your host, John Fay, with hosts Allison Silbowski and host Jordan Ezel. We are a podcast by students for students. We're all at Temple University in the communications field, and every week or so, we like to do a show and talk about various subject matters. A lot of the time, alluding to things that students would be concerned about. This week, we wanted to talk about something that every student should be concerned about, in our opinions, which is finding the job after you graduate. That's what we're all here for. I don't know anybody that's going to college and just being like, all right, I'm going to go do something else other than what I've gone to school for 4 years for. So that's what
happened.
Wait, what?
I said it's definitely happened. I've had friends that have gone into a certain major and then ended up in a completely different other field.
Okay, it does happen. I think, but I think there's a lot of people, especially once you get like towards the middle of your education, where you start looking for a lot of jobs afterwards. And I think I'm just going to pass it off to you two. What's been we're all at different points in our schooling. So what's been your guys' experience with this?
I can go first. So, I don't have much. Well, okay. So I did come into like school thinking that I wanted to do like graphic design, be an art director in advertising, and just through going through the advertising program, that didn't end up being the case. So I guess that was like my main thing, and then kind of like took a few months to try to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was a little lost for a few months. Last year, my sophomore year, and then like I really got into like the video production, video editing, and now I'm like, okay, I can see myself doing something like that. But I guess that would be my closest experience. That like I did kind of change what I wanted to do when I started college, to then like now. It's like the same field, but like it's kind of like a different department, I guess. Would be.
Yeah, I did the same thing. When I went to college, I always knew that I wanted to be in some realm of communications, but I really thought that I wanted to be a radio personality. So I actually had a show with one of my friends freshman year where we hosted a radio show within our school's network. And then kind of quickly realized that it was a lot of fun, but it just was I didn't really know if I could see myself doing it long term. And I also thought about how competitive that field is, and kind of switched my paths from kind of the more, because Albright has two tracks. You either do journalism or you do PR and advertising. So it just ended up being able to switch my track right into there. So it's kind of where it led me to today.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat right now, especially I'm about to graduate in a few months. I'm in my last semester of college. And I've always thought of myself wanting to be like kind of like a straight laced reporter. And like one of you just said, the field I've decided on is very competitive. And I'm just now kind of second guessing myself, where I'm just like, maybe I should be looking at something else. So I have been looking at something that a lot of journalism majors do go into, which is publishing. I've always been interested in books, so I am kind of keeping that option open right now. My mother worked in it when I was younger, so I've always kind of been around it, and I've always been aware of what it takes. And I think it's good to open up to other possibilities. That's the beauty of a college degree, is it like, unless you have like a very particular concentration, you can be open to a lot of different job opportunities afterwards.
Especially in our field of like media and communication. I know like my curriculum, I'm sure the same is with yours. They teach us like so many different aspects of the field that even if you're not like an expert in one thing, like I know like I'm nowhere near an expert in like analytics, but like I do know some analytics, and like I do know some copywriting. So like I do know different aspects of the field. So that makes it really easy to like be able to kind of transfer your stuff if you feel like this.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of from personal experience, when I graduated, I was terrified and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was definitely that person that was on top of it. I was interviewing for jobs start as early as like October of my senior year. Just because I'm pay everything myself, I could do everything myself. So I needed to make sure I had something lined up. I kind of ended up working like I got an offer from a really sketchy company. They said that they were a marketing company, but really all that they did was I would hop into lifts. I That would be my job the entire day. I would just get in a lift and convince them to also or an Uber and convince them to become Lyft drivers as well. And that was my job, and I wasn't supposed to make much for it. I had to work 6 days a week. It was really weird.
Oh,
So yeah, I didn't end up actually accepting that, but then when I moved to Philly, I just kind of started looking around, but took the first thing that I had, which was recruitment job. And they say a lot of the times, like the first job that you get straight out of college most likely isn't going to be the company that you stay with forever or the job that you're going to do. And we were kind of talking about this before the show started, but really, like the best thing about being in the field that we are is we do have so many options and we can try stuff out. And you're really not going to know really what you want to do or where you want to be until you start putting yourself in these roles.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the communications field is very experience oriented, so it's not like, oh, we have the degree and we can just go right
Mhm.
into a job. It's like you really have to show that you know what you're doing, because I mean, like I'm sure there's a lot of people with journalism degrees who just have the degree and they don't have any actual experience. So when they go into the real jobs, they're just, compared to other people, they might be very inexperienced. So yeah, I think it's important to find internships, and also it's very important to be aware of the places that unfortunately do take advantage of people looking for their first job experience, which we've all had that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So uh, yeah, I think it's just very important to uh, keep your ear open, keep your eyes open for different opportunities, and also when you finally get a job interview for a place that you are thinking of staying at for quite a while, to be really prepared for that job interview, because the job interview will make or break whether or not you get it. And
Yeah.
that's something that we want to talk about today, is kind of the preparation for a good interview. And two things I know we want to focus on were recommendation letters and negotiating salary, because those are going to be two very important factors in when you get your job and how that job is going to be for the entirety of the time that you're there.
Yeah. Before we get into that, a little bit of advice that I wanted to talk about is do your research. Make sure that, there's a lot of things online where you can check to see if a company is legitimate or not. And, also networking. We've talked about this in the past, but it's so extremely important knowing people in this industry. So making sure that you're connecting with people and keeping those relationships alive and making sure that you're really, connecting with your professors because they have either worked at these companies before or probably know people who have, and they're probably going to be the first ones who know about a job opportunity. So that's some good advice too.
One thing about making sure you connect with your professors, I know like all of us, and I don't know if or when this will actually stop, like when still in school. So we're all on like Zoom, like online classes, even though like it's not the best to like want to keep your camera on for every class. I was told like a few months ago that like keeping your camera on is one thing that's like really important. And like I know some days there are just the days where I'm like I look gross, like I might have just rolled out of bed, like if I'm gonna be honest. But like making sure you like put the time to like be engaged and like have your professor see you, because
Mhm.
you're gonna be the first that comes to mind. um like I know this semester I've tried really hard to like make sure my camera is always on, even if it's like the awkward I'm the only one with my camera on in class. In the end of the day, like I will be the one who they might remember because I have a face to my name rather than other people who will never have their camera on. So that's just
Right.
one thing, like a little piece of advice when you're like making sure you connect with your professors.
Shows initiative, shows that you're
Exactly.
actually interested in what's happening. You're not just there just like, all right, I'm just here to get the A. It's like, no, you want to engage with that professor because, like you said, they'll remember you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I also think like for my program I have no choice but to keep my camera on. Like my professors are very particular about that, but it helps me stay engaged in what we're talking about too.
Hmm. I definitely
Yeah.
find like when I don't have my camera on, I'm like, oh, maybe I should like go get a snack in the kitchen, or oh, why is
Mhm.
there like a random shoe in my room? Let me go pick that up. But like when I have my camera on, I'm like, well, people could see me, so I can't just like walk away. So it's
Right.
also another way to like stay engaged, like you said, Jordan.
And when you're in a full-time position, that's going to be just expected anyway.
Yeah. So you might as
Mhm.
well just keep that mindset in college to get yourself prepared for it in a less, I guess, professional setting.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. And we were mentioning, like making sure that the place you're looking at is legit. Just a quick little story. Right before I got into Temple, like I knew I was getting in. It was like maybe a few weeks before. I was desperate to get out of a retail job that I was in. Uh, and I actually, it's one of those things where like it was kind of a learning lesson where you have to be very careful as to who's looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
There was I got a job offer for a place, and it was the person straight up said it was a reporting gig, and I was like, okay, this is great. I walk in, total pyramid scheme. It was like a total sales thing, and I was like, well, where's the reporting in this? He's like, oh, we'll get to that, but I think that you'll be good at. I just got up and left. I was like, all right, you lied to my face
Yep.
and wasted an hour of my life.
That's exactly how all those companies are.
Yeah.
Beware the pyramid scheme, because they
Mhm.
they suck college kids in all the time. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I'll never fall for that. And I was just like, oh, they just straight up lied to me. That's how they get you in.
Yeah, it's the door-to-door
So
sales
yep, that's what they were
when
asking. I was
they
like,
call
oh,
you
this
some
is
type of like coordinator, communications coordinator, or
yep,
whatever. You ain't a
Uh,
communications coordinator.
I'll fall for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's
I was
awful.
just like, oh, okay. So
Mm-mm.
yeah, be aware of that. Look into places before you do the interview. I learned, wouldn't say the hard way, but it was just like, okay, that was a waste of my time.
A big thing too is during an interview, as much as they're interviewing you for the position, you should be interviewing them
Yeah.
for the role and being at that company. Like make sure that you're asking them tough questions too, just because you want to get a job so bad. Like really, I really wish I would have gone back to myself and really thought about the opportunities that were presented to me and did a little bit more research and kind of dug a little bit deeper instead of just being like, yes, perfect, the job. Like if I would have
Yep,
taken some more time and maybe thought through some things, it might have been a
yep,
little bit different.
And that also goes in the same boat with like internships. Like, I mean, I know I'm guilty for this as well, but like, I guess doing your research on different companies and everything, and just knowing like what the company has to offer, and like just making sure, again, I guess you're not being taken advantage of.
Hmm.
Because like, even though everyone wants an internship, you want that foot in the door. Just make sure like they're treating you right.
Definitely.
exactly. Because there are a lot of companies that will take advantage of people who, not knowing better is maybe not the right word, but they're inexperienced in like looking for the right place. So yeah, definitely be aware of that. Look for little red flags if you're able to. We've all
Know
seen
your
red
worth.
flags. Wait, what?
I said know your worth.
Know your worth. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clearly you have something that they want if they're going to bring you in for an interview. So know, try to figure out what that really is, what sticks out about. And I've even asked that on interviews because maybe this isn't the best advice, but I've even said, hey, what is the reason that you selected my application out of, all the other people? And it's really interesting to hear what they have to say.
That's a good
Hmm.
interview question.
Yeah.
Yep. I I think it's very important to go over something like recommendation letters, which that's a very important thing. It's kind of like you're almost playing a little game where it's like you want to do good at one place so that you have a recommendation for another place.
Hmm.
What has been your guys' experience with recommendation letters, if any?
Yeah, I've actually had a bunch of experience with it. So when I was in college, I needed recommendation letters for one of the internships. So people that I've gone to have been my professors. I worked at Chili's for a little bit, so I asked my supervisor. And then when I was in applying for grad school, I needed recommendation letters. So I again went back to some professors, and I actually got one of my professors taught at Temple. So I thought about the connection from she was an Albright teacher, but she taught at Temple and I was trying to get into Temple. So I reached out to her and had her write one for me. And honestly, I love when I get to read them because it's something that a professor will talk about, or someone that I've worked for. They'll pick out like the smallest things that I didn't even know about myself or didn't really think was a big deal, but they highlight that. And I
Mhm.
think that that's super awesome. And something that I've done is I have a recommendation letter from one of my graduate professors that I've just kind of kept on file. And whenever I send in a job application, if it has an option of putting more files in or different, adding things, you should obviously your resume, if you need a cover letter, your portfolio, but adding in like a recommendation letter might end up being one extra thing that helps like makes you stand out.
Mhm. That's good because I feel like that's something when you're like applying for things, they don't really talk about like, oh, you can add like
Hmm.
a letter of recommendation.
Right. Like a
No,
job might ask for it, but if you just provide it first, it's an extra thing that they see.
it's something that makes you stand out
Right.
and it makes you look and it will make you look good in the long run. You can show your character.
Right.
It's an advantage to have over other people applying for the same position, because if you have the recommendation letter and somebody else doesn't, the employers might look at you a little more.
Hmm.
Especially if you have a recommendation letter from a professor who has some type of connection at that company already.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's huge. Like attach that. Definitely.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
awesome. Because it's all about the trust of, okay, I know I trust this employee, and if they say that this person is, a good student and very trustworthy, then that's gonna make me think about them over candidates that I don't even know.
That's true.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's good to, always, like I said, it's almost like playing a game. You want to make sure that you do well at one place. So always keep that in mind when you're working, even at like a first internship or a first job or something like that. Be a person that will easily get a letter of recommendation. Work a little extra, do a little extra more. Sorry, this is a little extra more of what they're asking of you, so that when time comes and you ask about a recommendation letter, they won't hesitate.
Right.
Also,
Mhm.
when you have like an internship or even just like a first job, making sure you're like really obviously like engaged, but also you're willing to do extra stuff because like the more that you're willing to do and like the curious more curious you are and they can see that they'll give you more stuff, more experience, and it'll just make for a better experience for you in the long run. Um,
Definitely.
so just like making sure you're really like putting yourself out there when you then have these jobs and you're out there.
And when it comes to asking a professor or maybe someone that you've worked with for a recommendation letter, it's completely okay to say, hey, this job that I'm applying for is looking for XYZ skill set. Would you mind talking about, my experience within that? Because then it makes it even more targeted towards the job that you're applying to.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the recommendation letter is always kind of like the foot in the door for an interview. Most of the time, it's something that they want kind of beforehand. Once you're actually in the interview, I think it's important to kind of, like we talked about, kind of interview them while they're interviewing you. And in my opinion, the most important thing that you want to negotiate is your salary,
Mhm.
because if you negotiate it the wrong way, they're either going to think you're asking too much, or I've been in a position, not for what I've gone to school for, but a previous job I had, I asked for too little, and I ended up getting paid way less than coworkers of mine. So
Right.
you want to be very careful. You want to do a lot of research beforehand as to how much somebody in that field is usually getting paid, and ask for around that, or even mention like, oh, okay, I know that people in this field usually get paid this much. Maybe ask something along the lines of, what do you think about this number that I'm giving you?
Yeah. And kind of a red flag that I've had in interviews with companies is when they ask you about, so say, it's a 2, 3 interview process and they ask you about salary on the first interview. You do not have to give them a number. Like John said, like I actually saw a lady on TikTok who was giving advice, and I thought that this was really interesting what she said. But basically saying, oh, I know that, somebody in this field makes this amount of range, but really I need to know more about the position as well as look at the overall compensation package because that can include benefits, all of that stuff to really give a straight number. So if an employer asks you for your number, you do not have to give it to them. Because John, you're right. Like I feel like there's been opportunities that I've had where I've either shot too high or shot too little, and just again goes back to knowing your worth too. You know, if you have a reason for what type of amount that you want, give that reasoning. Like, oh, I have a bachelor's degree, I've had this amount of internships, I graduated from my master's program, like these are the reasons that I'm worth the amount that I'm asking for.
Yeah. In a way, you almost want to have it where it's not like you're not asking them for the job. It's more of like, I'm offering my skill set to you.
Yeah.
And it would be of benefit to your company to have me on board. But without directly saying that, because obviously you'll sound pompous. But
Right. Be humble.
you want to kind of offer yourself as like the full package almost. You don't want to be just like, could I please have a job? Because they'll take advantage of you the moment that you act like that. The moment you let your guard down.
And it's completely okay to, if you do have an offer in hand, it's completely okay to negotiate that salary at that point as well. Obviously you kind of want to have more of a better idea of what you might be offered or vice versa for the employer, but it's okay to say, well, I got an offer from another company and they're offering me this. I prefer your company, but they're offering me a little bit more. Is there any way that you could meet that or beat that?
Exactly.
Don't say it the way that I'm saying it, but
you do to a certain extent want to be assertive with this, because being unassertive with something like this could result in you getting paid way less than you're supposed to be getting paid. So, there's a different. I think some people might think that being assertive means that you're like coming off as rude. There's a thin line between the two. You can be very positively assertive where you're just like, no, I think I should be getting paid this much. But not being like, I deserve to have this much. Because when it's more of just like, I deserve this because I'm so good, then they'll just feel like, I don't know if you're the right fit here. So, don't be afraid to be assertive when it comes to your salary, because that's something you should be assertive about.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, like money isn't everything. And personally, I do want to be in a position that I really care about what I'm doing and I enjoy it.
Mhm.
But we all live, we all have expenses. So it's, that's an important part of a job too. I love when employers like, why do you want to work here? And I'm just, to get money, like to be
Yeah.
paid. Like I need money to live.
Yeah. Yep. Is there any other advice that we could give right now? I think that those are two very important aspects of getting a job after you graduate.
Also, just like making sure you stay true to yourself, and like even during these interview processes, like yes, it's very like it could be intimidating and it's scary, or like when you really love a company, you're like, I really want them to like me. But just keep remembering, like especially in our field, not only are they hiring you for your skills, but also for your personality. Like
Mhm.
you're going to be working with them like for like hours every single day. So, and whether it's right or not, they have to like your personality. So don't be afraid to show it a little. Like if you're really passionate about the job that you have, show that in your personality, cuz it might put you above someone else as well.
Agreed. And like during an
Exactly. Yes.
interview, bonding with the person that you're interviewing with, maybe that's over a shared experience or a shared connection of some sort. Like that's always a good
Yeah.
thing to talk about on interviews as well. Always do your research. Like if I know who's going to be interviewing me, I'll check out their LinkedIn. I Google
Do a little
them. Like,
Facebook
Yeah.
stalking, like
yep. Like
no shame, no shame.
Yep.
exactly.
Especially for our field, I mean, in communications field, that's very important. But especially with journalism, I mean, it's like, trying to do research,
Hmm.
doing research on you. So,
100%.
yep.
I think just
Yeah.
like another piece of advice from my own experience of going out into the real world, when you are in your first position, and you hate it, because I have been there, don't get down on yourself. Keep doing the best you can in your job, but also know that you can keep looking other places. And although there's like a stigma around how long that you've been at a company for on your resume, the longer it looks better. If you are unhappy in a position and you've done everything you can to change that, whether that be addressing the issues with your manager, or maybe it's just the job itself, like maybe it's the people thinking about switching a team. just know that like it is okay for you to keep searching.
Yeah.
And you can do that discreetly, and you can don't tell your manager that you're looking, but if a company, and when you're on an interview, companies will ask you, why are you looking to leave your current company? Don't bash the company. Just say, I've been here for so amount of time. I've realized that this isn't, what I want to do, and I want to be happy in the role that I'm in. And that's why I'm, seeking out X position at Y company.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very important bit of advice. Do not complain about the place that you're at, because if you
Yeah.
do, the company you're looking at, they're like, if he's in a position here and he's unhappy, he'll do the same exact thing to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one question that I've gotten a lot when I was at my old company was like, oh, well, what's the relationship like with your manager? It's a big one that I've gotten. And I've always, I did have a good relationship with my manager. He wasn't the one that was the issue. So, I was able to talk about that in a positive light, but they will ask you questions around what they think might be a pain point within why you're looking to leave without
Yeah.
being directly asking about it. But just make sure that your experience is positive, even if that isn't how you truly feel. The whole
Yeah.
goal is to get out of that company. So
Yeah.
you don't want to anything, you don't want to say negatively about it.
Yeah. Being honest almost all the time is very important, but if you need to fudge the truth in order for something, I mean, it's not a bad thing. Literally everybody does it. I don't know
Mhm.
anybody that's completely honest in a job interview. So, be honest with the things you should be honest about, but with things like that, avoid avoid sounding negative, and avoid sounding like you might be like a bad employee or something
Right.
like that. I'm not using the right words here, but you want to sound like the best possible candidate for the job that you're applying for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those type of negative comments aren't going to help anyone in that
At all.
situation.
Nope.
No. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think we can wrap it up with, be prepared, have everything that you can need, have the letter of recommendation. That's very important. That'll be a one up when you're competing with 4 or 5 other people trying to get the same position, and know your worth. I think that's the biggest takeaways from today's show.
And just like your first position is not going to be your last. So if you happen to, you're in a position right now where you're questioning where you're going to go and what you're going to end up doing, or liking where you're at, things work out the way that they're supposed to, and with some time and maybe some guidance. Like I truly believe that everyone will end up where they're meant to be and where they are the happiness, if they don't settle for jobs like the pyramid scheme, and know their worth, and just do your research. It'll
Yep.
be okay.
Life is too short to be in a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some people are like, oh, I have to compromise for X, Y, and Z. And it's like, to a certain extent, you have to. But, for your own happiness, again, life is short. Find the job that makes you
Spend
happy.
more of your time working than you do anything else.
So you might
Yep.
as well,
So you might as well like it.
You might as well like
Exactly.
it. Exactly. Yep. I think that we can wrap the show up with that. That's a great way to end the show
It's
today.
the tagline. You might as well like it.
Yeah.
You might as well like it. Perfect.
Love that.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for listening. This is the Hot Mess Podcast. I am your host, John Fay, with hosts Allison Silbowski and Jordan Ezel. We will catch you on the next episode. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.